Hi, this is Remembering the Past, the show where we talk about people who've died recently who've had a profound effect on our history, our society, or our culture. We're sports intensive tonight, and we're going to start out with David Stern, who died recently at the age of 77. David Stern was the NBA commissioner for 30 years from 1984 to 2014, and he was the right man at the right time. He transformed it into a multi-billion-dollar organization. He was whip smart, and he managed to keep a balance between the owners who employed him and the players who he promoted to make the game an international success. He clearly should be recognized as one of the top commissioners in American sports history. Here's ESPN on David Stern.
Welcome into the Jump. I'm Rachel Nichols. I'm here with Zach Lowe, Paul Pierce. Just incredibly sad news with the passing of David Stern, a man who oversaw the NBA as its commissioner for 30 years, moving the league into the modern era. Paul, how will you remember David?
I'm going to remember him as a pioneer of the NBA who helped the NBA gain the popularity that it has today. Before social media, he had this vision of growing the game of basketball into a global game, and he passed that on to Adam Silver. The game wouldn't be where it is today without David Stern. I had the honor of shaking his hand on stage as a draftee in 1998. That was one of my proudest moments to date, and he will always remember as one of the pioneers who helped the game grow into a global, iconic sport.
He's one of the most important figures in business, not just sports, in the last 50 years. An absolutely towering person, and as Paul said, guided the NBA from the era of tape delay to what it is now. Whether it was the Dream Team or anything else, he always conducted himself with the best interests of the league and the sport in mind, even when he had to be a little forceful during the collective bargaining and things like that.
A little forceful?
It was for the betterment of the sport and the betterment of the business. And just like I said, an absolutely towering figure.
I mean, he was such a huge personality. I say a little forceful, certainly ruled the league at times with that iron fist, but also had tremendous compassion, tremendous wit. He was incredibly funny, right? And made everybody feel like they were comfortable talking to him, even if he decided that he was going to have the last word. To your point about business, my gosh, it's not just the games were on tape delay. Playoff games were on tape delay when he took over the league. Now the NBA is an $8 billion business. The average franchise values this year are expected to be around $2 billion average. You've got players making more than $40 million a year in salaries in some cases. And it is a global brand. Again, the Dream Team, so many innovations. I also think it's important to talk about his legacy of what he has done for minorities and women in sports, because the NBA led the way in putting those kinds of groups in leadership positions, not just on the court, in the coaching ranks, in the executive ranks, in the league office. Of course, the WNBA was formed under David Stern's watch. And this really, we saw an echo around the entire sports world, in the NFL, other sports leagues. And I really, really believe that without David and his leadership on that, we wouldn't have seen those kinds of advances to that degree the way we have. He will be so missed by so many of us, and he will never be forgotten.
Paul Pierce mentioned there how he shook David Stern's hand at the draft. That was one of his public roles, was to announce the draft choices in the NBA. So he announced many great players over the years, and also the presentation of the O'Brien Trophy to the NBA champion. He gave that to Michael Jordan 6 times, and he and Michael Jordan had a special relationship. He helped make Michael Jordan the face of the league, and he also did a good job of managing the public relations when Magic Johnson declared himself HIV positive. He was inducted into the Naismith Memorial Basketball Hall of Fame in 2014. People who led him on stage included Bill Russell, Larry Bird, Magic Johnson, and Bob Lanier. You do that, you know you've done something. Here he is with a little bit on Magic Johnson during his induction speech.
Magic taught us that out of adversity, we in basketball could teach the world something. We changed the debate on AIDS. It was bad enough that when Magic announced that he was HIV, that we all thought he was going to die. I don't know how else to say it. I'm almost moved to tears every time I'm in his presence, and I love to give him a hug, just to check that he's still there. And I tell him when it gets a little flabby. Coming from me, that's kind of interesting. But Magic, and I actually believed him when he said he would play the game for nothing because he loved it so much, and that smile. And he's demonstrated off the court how you give back to the community, not only working with respect to HIV, but investing in the inner city. He tells us what the best of basketball is possible about. And I'm moved by him on a regular basis.
Our feature tonight is also a sports person, and by way of introduction, here's a young Vin Scully on a late afternoon in October 1956.
Got it! No runs, no hits, no errors, no walks, no base runners. The final score, the Yankees 2 runs, 5 hits, and no errors. The Dodgers, no runs, no hits, no errors, in fact, nothing at all.
Scully was calling the last out of Game 6 of the '56 World Series. It was a check swing by pinch hitter Dale Mitchell, and it was a perfect game, the only perfect game ever pitched in World Series history, and it is indeed the greatest game ever pitched. It might be the greatest accomplishment ever in team sports, and I say that because no one has even come close to pitching a perfect game in the World Series, and it was done by Don Larsen, who died recently at the age of 90. Don Larsen came out of Point Loma High School in San Diego, also the home of David Wells, who also pitched a perfect game in the regular season, so the only high school they had 2 perfect game pitchers. Made the majors with the St. Louis Browns, who became the Baltimore Orioles. The Yankees picked him up in 1955. Pitched decently, not great for the Yankees, liked to party with the boys. In the 1956 World Series, he started Game 2 and failed to get through the second inning. But Casey Stengel had a feel for him and sent him out on the must-win Game 5 with the series tied. And here's what happened.
Heck, this game's been played over 100-something years. There's never been a no-hitter in the World Series. And he pitched the perfect one.
And then when you get the 2 teams, the big rivals, New York and Brooklyn together, you can't ask for a better setting.
It's something that I'll never forget, and I hope it lasts a long time. Who knows? Well, the biggest part of pitching is control, and I never had such good control. And everything that Yogi called for, I threw it pretty close to where he wanted it.
He was behind on one hitter. That was in the first inning of the Pee Wee race. He got 3 balls on him, and that was it.
97 pitches, 70 were strikes, 2 hours and 6 minutes. The game flew by against a great opponent, Sal Magley.
I'm glad I didn't have a big lead, because I could have relaxed, just one pitch with that lineup of the Dodgers, and I could have blown it very easily.
I'll guarantee that nobody has left this ballpark.
The only long ball hit by anybody from the Dodgers, Gil Hodges hit it. Mickey Mantle had to run about 500 feet and make a backhand catch off of the fly ball.
Bottom of the 7th inning, I came in the dugout and I bumped Mantle to look at the scoreboard. I said, wouldn't it be something, 2 more innings to go? I probably shouldn't have said anything because then nobody would talk with me.
When it gets into the 8th inning or something and you got a World Series game and they haven't got a hit, yeah, you're a little concerned somebody's going to foul up or something.
I can see the folks already craning forward, leaning just a bit as they strain for full concentration on the performance here in the 9th.
Well, I was pretty nervous myself.
Carl Furillo, who will lead off in this 9th inning.
Carl Furillo, fly ball to Hank Bauer in right field. Now there are 2 to go. Next batter is Roy Campanella. Round out to Billy Martin.
Dale Mitchell comes up with 2 out in the 9th inning.
I said, oh boy, I was worried because Dale Mitchell was probably one of the better hitters for years that could always get a piece of the ball.
Before he came to bat, I probably said a little prayer, oh man, get me through one more.
Every pitch came in, there'd be a roar of the crowd. And then it would subside just like the waves going out, silence. So they waited for the next one.
I was shaking a little bit, quite a bit.
There was that moment frozen in time when that pitch came in.
This strikes ball 1. Here comes the pitch. Strike 4. Another hole. Perfect game for Don Larsen. Yogi Berra comes out there. He leaps on Larsen. And he's scored by his teammate. Look at this crowd.
Everything exploded then. I can sort of remember that Dale turned around to argue. Nobody was there. Babe had left and Yogi was jumping on me.
Here's Don Larsen, 6'4", 215 pounds. And Yogi Berra, short, squat. And when they got together with the leap in Larsen's arms, it looked like the baby being cradled up there for both their biggest moments.
That's got to be the highlight part, catching a no-hitter. It's never been done.
Well, I was just sort of thrilled, but when he hit me, my mind probably went blank, and it probably still is.
Yankees lost Game 6 and won the series in Game 7. A couple of things. Mantle's catch was one of the great catches in World Series history, considering how far he had to run and that he had to backhand the ball. He also hit the home run that won the game. That was his Triple Crown season. Meanwhile, Don Larsen pitched for a bunch of teams for the next 10 years and had a losing record for the rest of his life. Well, we're going to close tonight with a non-sports figure, Jack Sheldon, who died recently at the age of 88. He was a jazz trumpeter. He was part of the West Coast jazz scene, but he was also a comedian, and he was on television a lot. He had a part in the short-lived Carol Williams show in the early 60s. He actually had his own sitcom, Run Buddy Run, that didn't run very long. He was the trumpeter in the Mort Lindsay Orchestra that backed up Merv Griffin on his television show, and every once in a while Merv would call him for a solo or talk to him for a little while. And he also did a lot of the music for the more recent children's show Schoolhouse Rock. Here's NPR on Jack Sheldon.
Jack Sheldon died last Friday at age 88. His list of accomplishments was long, and while his name may not be well known, his voice certainly is.
I'm just a bill, yes, I'm only a bill, and I'm sitting here on Capitol Hill. Well,
Schoolhouse Rock, but there was a lot more to Jack Sheldon's career than that. Here's NPR's Danny Hensel with more.
As a performer, Jack Sheldon was hard to pin down. He played trumpet in several jazz bands. He had an arresting singing voice. He was a fixture on TV, and he had something of a comedy career. Sheldon was born in Jacksonville, Florida. He told the Phileas Jazz Archive at Hamilton College in 1999 that he became fascinated by the trumpet when he saw bandleader Harry James appear in movies. His family couldn't afford an instrument, so he made one out of Tinker Toys. Sheldon finally started playing professionally on a real trumpet around age 12. Dressed in a blue suit, he was frequently mistaken for an adult.
I could go up to the bar. I remember I got a whiskey sour, and it was much harder to play after I kept seeing a lot of different clusters of notes.
He later joined the Air Force, but continued to play the trumpet. When he left the service, Sheldon became a part of the Los Angeles jazz scene in the 50s. Playing with the who's who of jazz's greats, among them Benny Goodman. Sheldon told WHYY's Fresh Air in 1993 that their collaboration was a turning point.
I wrote a song, and Benny let me sing. He was the first band leader that would ever let me sing. Stan Kenton wouldn't let me sing, though, because he always was afraid I would say something too off-color, which I probably would have.
Did you have a reputation for doing that?
Yes. I worked with Lenny Bruce. I was trying to kind of emulate him at the time.
Sheldon and Bruce, yes, that Lenny Bruce, got a band together and staged a burlesque in Los Angeles. He also teamed up with jazzman Jack Marshall, and the two released a comedy album together called Freaky Friday, the Jazz Opera. Sheldon even starred in a short-lived series on CBS, Run Buddy Run.
This is Buddy Overstreet. He's wanted by the head of the most powerful crime syndicate in the country.
And if that wasn't enough, Sheldon also served as the resident funny man in the Merv Griffin Show band. On that stage, he sang with Ethel Merman and danced with Ann Miller. He told the Phileas Jazz Archive that he was comfortable in front of the camera.
I feel better on the stage than I do anywhere else. Really more at home and more relaxed. And it's such fun for me. It really is fun. And the cameras being on makes it better.
In the mid-60s, he also played trumpet on The Shadow of Your Smile from the movie The Sandpiper. It was one of several soundtracks he contributed to, and it's one of his most enduring performances. Still, Jack Sheldon may be best remembered for the work he did with an educational company in the 70s.
Conjunction, what's your function? Hooking up words and phrases and clauses.
Conjunction Junction and I'm Just a Bill are two of several collaborations between Sheldon and the creators of Schoolhouse Rock. Sheldon continued to play jazz late into his life, leading a big band in Southern California and jam sessions at his home well into his 80s.
Well, I'm going to close on that note. I want to thank my producer and IT genius, Sid Tepps, as a final tribute to Jack Sheldon. We're going to have him with Benny Goodman, and Jack Sheldon does a little song written by some guy named McCartney. Sid, you ever heard of this guy?
Now, in the Black Mountain Hills in Dakota, there once lived a young boy named Rocky Raccoon. One day his woman left him for another guy. Hit poor Rocky in the eye. Rocky didn't like that. He said, someday I'm going to get that boy. So one day he walked into town and booked himself a room at the local saloon. Rocky Raccoon checked into his room, only to find Gideon's Bible